The left has spent a long time at this point, um, spent a long time at this point denigrating the United States, um, really questioning whether or not our founding is something worth celebrating. And I don't think that can really be called into question when you look at things like the 1619 Project, when you look at the overall narrative from the left. Um, they don't have any special appreciation for George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or James Madison or John Adams or Samuel Adams. Again, especially when you're talking about the founders that were associated with owning slaves. They really see it as their duty to reopen this and to make their entire contribution to the United States primarily about slavery or primarily about the things that they got wrong, instead of looking at it within the proper context and recognizing how incredible it was for Thomas Jefferson to sit down and write, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." That was considered an incredibly radical concept at that time. And people look at it like, oh, well, he said that, but he owned slaves. Yes, correct. He actually wrote a document because he struggled with the institution of slavery. He wrote a document that planted the seeds for slavery's destruction in the United States because it was a contradiction. But there's no appreciation for any of that. People just look at it from the modern vision of critical theory or 20th and 21st century concepts and say, well, if you did something that would be unacceptable now, then you're a horrible person. Without ever taking into consideration that there was a huge debate that was going on even at the founding of the country with respect to the institution of slavery. There was already a robust movement, anti-slavery movement. It took time. We fought a whole war over it. But even then, we can't even look back and recognize that what was said at that point, and this is why Frederick Douglass, who I think was probably the most influential abolitionist, Frederick Douglass actually argued with William Lloyd Garrison. William Lloyd Garrison had argued that the Constitution was fundamentally flawed in a way that was basically unrecoverable because of the institution of slavery. And Frederick Douglass, a black man who came out of slavery, told William Lloyd Garrison, a white abolitionist, he was wrong, that the Constitution, properly understood within the framing of the Declaration of Independence, was a document about liberty and about freedom. But the modern left can't seem to wrap their mind around that. And that's because ultimately, if they had their way, they would remake the United States of America and they would just write the founders out of it. They would. They would remake our institutions. They don't like our constitutional republic. They constantly talk about our democracy because they have fundamental problems with the way our Constitution was written. They have fundamental problems with things like the Electoral College. They have fundamental problems with things like the United States Senate. They would like to go to something very different. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's not considered was not considered a wild, crazy, far left progressive. She was definitely a left-wing liberal. But she even said that if she was going to recommend someone adopt a constitution or look to guidance for a constitution, she wouldn't recommend the United States Constitution. She would recommend the South African Constitution. By the way, how's the South African Constitution working out for them? I think we just need to understand something, that that this is where the left has brought their own side. We didn't push them in this direction. Donald Trump did not push them in this direction. They've been on this path for a long time.